Hello besties and welcome to another Genshin theory! Today I have 3 smaller theories since I don't have a single topic that would take up an entire video. Timestamps for individual theories will be in the description in case you want to skip around. With that out of the way, let's get started with theory number 1. So something that's always confused me is the celestial nail and the chasm. It's been almost a year since the chasm was released and I really haven't even thought about it much until now. It just never made sense to me. At least with the one in Dragonspine we know why it was dropped on Salvindagnir, but we have almost no information on the one in the chasm. The chasm celestial nail is nicknamed the Spiritstone, so I'll be calling it that too. I'm sure it's been a while since all of you played the chasm quest, so I'll remind you what happened with the Spiritstone. Like in Dragonspine with Skyfrost Nail, we had to purify it. After we did that, the ruined serpent emerged from beneath it. From a distance, Yelan shot the Spiritstone, causing it to fall down on the ruined serpent. Obviously, the ruined serpent was killed. When the Spiritstone fell, it greatly disturbed the ground beneath it. It used to be completely smooth, but now it's the opposite. Immediately after the Spiritstone hit the ground, it rose back up on its own where it still floats today. So first, let's figure out what the Spiritstone was used for. If you look at the surrounding area, you'll see that there's no hole above or below it to indicate that it was dropped or rose up into the chasm. This leads me to believe that it was initially placed there by Celestia without disturbing the chasm's natural environment. However, in some of the Chasm's world quests, we learn that the Spiritstone has the ability to alter the natural environment around it. That's probably why the land around it has been morphed into a bunch of rectangular lines. I doubt it was like that before the Spiritstone just showed up there. When the Spiritstone is dropped by Yelan, it unsurprisingly messes up the smooth stone surface beneath it. I could be overanalyzing this, but I think the stone formed a triquetra when it came up as the Spiritstone hit it. The triquetra is a symbol that appears all over Genshin. There's lots of debate as to what it stands for, but as of right now, I think it symbolizes Celestia, or at least the heavenly principles. I made a video on the triquetra a while back, so that's linked in the description if you want more info on that. The divine nail in Dragonspine was used to destroy the ancient civilization of Salvindagnir, likely because the princess correctly predicted the cataclysm thousands of years in the future. These nails are used by Celestia to take out entire civilizations with a few impacts. It only took 3 for Salvindagnir to be completely eradicated. Another important aspect of the Spiritstone is its location in the chasm. The chasm has one of the longest and most complicated histories of any place in Teyvat. There are 2 major events that occurred here that changed the world forever. First, when the Primordial One and the Second Who Came went to war, the Moon Sisters' solar chariot fell out of the sky and into the chasm, and second, Conry and Belligerent sent rift hounds through the chasm up into Linktree during the cataclysm. Because both of these events are related to Celestia and occurred in the chasm, I think it's safe to guess that the Spiritstone has something to do with at least one of them. The story of the solar chariot is not widely known within Genshin, nor within its real-world community, so I'll explain what that's about. A long time ago, the 3 Moon Sisters, Arya, Sonnet, and Canon, rode around in the sky in a solar chariot and would switch places being the moon every so often. But when a human and a Seelie got married in the lunar realm during the Second Who Came's war on the Primordial One's universal civilization, the sisters forgot to switch places in the sky and the solar chariot fell to the earth. But many years later, during the Archon War, it's said that the solar chariot became so frustrated with the state of the world that it literally launched itself back into the sky. Because the solar chariot eventually returned to the heavens, it's impossible for the Spiritstone to be any part of it. So with no other explanation, the Spiritstone must be a remnant of whatever conflicts occurred in Linktree during the cataclysm. We know very little about how Linktree handled its homefront attacks at the time, but we do know 3 important details about it. 1, the chasm saw the worst of Linkree's battles during the cataclysm. 2, the chasm has strong narrative and visual ties to Sumeru, which Conria is said to be directly beneath, and 3, Morax was not in Linktree during the cataclysm. Given this information, I think it would make a lot of sense if the Spiritstone was placed deep within the chasm by the sustainer of heavenly principles to prevent Conrians from attacking above ground Teyvat. After all, we know what these divine nails can do. We saw what happened with Salvindagnir, but the difference here is that I don't think this nail was ever actually used. Like I said earlier, the stone above and below the nail is completely undisturbed until Yelan moves it. To me, this indicates that unlike Salvindagnir, it never hit the ground in order to attack. Instead, it's just sitting there like it's waiting to do that. I think that for whatever reason, the Sustainer just decided not to use this nail against Conrians during the Cataclysm even though she placed it there. Maybe Bosacius and the Millilith were already doing a good enough job of fending off Conrian monsters in her eyes. I mean, there's hardly any physical remnants of the Cataclysm in Linktree, unlike in other countries, so they probably just handled it fine on their own. But if that's the case, why is the Spiritstone still there? Did the Sustainer just leave it in the chasm in case anything happened again? Did she forget to get rid of it, or is someone else holding on to it now? Look at the squares around it. They're not red like the Sustainers are, they're blue. If you've been following my theories on Celestia for a while, then you know that I think the Primordial One is dead and the Second Who Came is the Sustainer of Heavenly Principles. For this theory, let's assume that that's correct, even though that isn't necessarily confirmed to be canon. Just because the Primordial One is dead doesn't mean that their 4 shades are dead. One of these shades, Istaroth, the God of Time, has shown a strong love for humanity time and time again across different locations and communities. If you know anything about the story going on in the background of Genshin, then you know that Istaroth is a driving force for major events in Teyvat. This might sound stupid, but I think Istaroth is holding the Spiritstone up. After Yelan makes it fall, it rises back up on its own and doesn't ever move again. Yelan drops it in order to kill a ruined serpent, which is obviously a Conrian robot, everyone knows that. I don't have time to go over my entire theory on why Istaroth advocated for Conrian's freedom right now, but I also linked that in the description. The point is, I don't think she'd want any more Conrian tech to be damaged or destroyed. She wants all humans, including Conrians, to forge their own paths. So in order to make sure that nothing bad ever happens to them again, she's literally holding on to the Spiritstone. That's what the blue squares are. She doesn't want anyone to ever drop it again because she understands its destructive properties and how the Sustainer really has it out for Conria, even now. Nahida has one of the most fascinating backstories in Genshin. She's the Dendro Archon and God of Wisdom, but despite her potential power and influence, she was trapped in the Sanctuary of Surasthana by humans for 500 years. She's the reborn version of Rukhdevada, the old Dendro Archon who died during the Cataclysm. Today, Rukhdevada has been completely removed from Irminsul, meaning that no natives of Teyvat will ever be able to remember her, not even Nahida. Rukhdevada's death and worldwide disappearance got me thinking about her successor. Is Nahida doomed to the same fate? We know by now that Teyvat's events happen in cycles. The cosmic cycle was implemented when the war between the Primordial One and the Second Who Came finished, and Celestia was established by the unknown victor. The world would be recycled and the events of the past would be completely erased. The only people who were aware of this were those who came from Celestia. In this time, which was long before the Archon War, Celestia sent divine envoys to guide humanity. Eventually, humans started to question the envoys about the nature of the world. Although this is probably a topic for another day, I think that this is why Celestia decided to do away with the envoys and use the Archons as their spokespeople instead. Unlike the divine envoys, the Archons are not technically from Celestia. Since they're not from Celestia, the Archons can't possibly be fully aware of the cosmic cycle. Nahida knows that there are samsaras, or cosmic cycles, going on, but when she talks about them, they seem to be contained to current events. For example, the most recent Sabzeruz festival. This particular samsara was actually due to the Sumeru Academia manipulating the Akasha and making it seem like people were reliving the same day over and over again, when in reality, time was actually passing normally outside of the Akasha. However, samsaras like these are not what I'm talking about when I say Teyvat operates within a cosmic cycle. Unlike this artificial samsara, the true cosmic cycle implemented by Celestia is real. The issue is that we have no way of knowing what came before the cycle we're currently in. For all we know, events similar to the ones Teyvat has experienced over its long history may have happened in a past cycle. If this is true, which it most likely is, then what are the implications for Nahida? Events in Teyvat repeat themselves even within a single cycle. It's unclear exactly why this happens. Maybe it's because of constellations, or ley line disorders, or someone tampering with Irminsul, or maybe cosmic cycles have been altered to occur within smaller places and identities rather than the entire world. No matter the explanation, we know that history repeats itself even within a single cosmic cycle. There are countless examples of this, so again, I'll link a video in the description explaining that. Since things in Teyvat tend to repeat, what's stopping Nahida from dying like Rukhdevada? Think about it, when we saw Rukhdevada in Irminsul, she didn't look like the grown-up version of her that we saw in cutscenes. Instead, she looked exactly like Nahida, almost like they were the exact same person in that moment. Nahida and Rukhdevada's similarities aren't just physical though, their stories are also very similar. Rukhdevada was left alone in the rainforest while her fellow gods and closest friends, King Deshret and the Goddess of Flowers, were together without her in the desert. Nahida was left alone in the Sanctuary of Surasthana, unable to help her nation, while the other 6 Archons have never experienced anything like that. In both cases, Rukhdevada and Nahida were kind of abandoned by those like them. Also, they both suffered losses of the people they cared the most about. Rukhdevada was there when Deshret died, and Nahida was there when Rukhdevada was removed from Irminsul. It's clear that Nahida's life is mirroring Rukhdevada's. The scariest part is that she has no idea that it's even happening. Nahida, along with the rest of the world, has no clue that Rukhdevada even existed. Because of that, she doesn't know that the person whose life hers is based on died an untimely death. Nahida doesn't know it, but she's probably going to die in the same way that Rukhdevada did. Thanks to the Travail trailer, we know that the final chapter of Genshin's main story will take place in Conria. But the quests in the main story are literally named Archon quests, since that's the whole point of the main plot. The traveler is looking for the 7 Archons in hopes that they can help them find their missing sibling. Obviously, Conria has no Archon, but I doubt they'll just completely forget about including the Archons in quests literally named after them at that point. This is just my personal speculation, but I think we're gonna see the Archons in Conria in the final chapter. This would of course include Nahida. Going to Conria could mark the end of her life. This is the same place where Rukhdevada died. Nahida's life is clearly playing out just like Rukhdevada's did. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Nahida die in Conria at the end of the story. After all, she was doomed from the start. The world is cyclical, and Conria is where her cycle always ends. In Child's 4th character story, we learned that when he was 14, he accidentally fell into the abyss. He was there for 3 months, but when he came back, only 3 days had passed. How is this possible? How can 1 day on Teyvat equal 1 month in the Abyss? I think us lore enthusiasts have a grave misunderstanding of the Abyss as a location. We often refer to the Abyss as beneath Teyvat as if it's within the planet itself. However, if the Abyss's time discrepancies are true and not just a figment of child's imagination, then the Abyss just can't be a part of the same planet as Teyvat. Teyvat has been implied to be flat. There are multiple instances in the game where people reference a firmament around the world, something that is almost exclusively associated with the flat Earth theory in real life. Obviously, the real Earth isn't flat, but from the way Teyvat is described in-game as having a firmament, Teyvat probably is. If Teyvat is flat, then that explains how Child fell into the Abyss in the first place. In his story, he says that he was running from bears and wolves when he, quote, lost his footing and fell into a bottomless crack in the Earth's surface. If Teyvat was round and the Abyss was beneath the surface of the Earth, then this just wouldn't be possible. Think about if this were to happen to you in real life. If you were to fall into a hole on Earth, you're not magically transported to another realm where time moves exponentially slower. You'd just fall underground, still in the same general area, and time would remain the same. But Teyvat is probably not round. In that case, it would make it much easier to fall through the world and into another realm, kinda like falling into space. Back before people knew Earth was round, they thought that if you kept moving in any direction without changing course, you'd eventually fall off the planet and into space. I think that this is true for Teyvat, since it's probably a flat world. Hypothetically, if a hole in Teyvat's Earth was deep enough, it could reach all the way through the world and into the Abyss. But I don't think the Abyss is just below the flat world of Teyvat. I think it's all around, even surrounding Celestia. All the way back in 1.1's main event, Unreconciled Stars, Scaramouche told us that the stars aren't real. At first this sounds completely crazy, but it really isn't that hard to believe if you consider other things we know about Teyvat's skies. For example, the moon is actually a dead body, so if things like that are possible, then why can't the stars be fake? I don't want to get into why the stars are fake today, since that's a whole different topic for another day, but let's just say that Scaramouche is right for now. If the stars we see are fake, then what's real? What exists beyond the false image of the sky that was placed there by some all-powerful entity? Let's go back to the firmament. In early religious descriptions of the firmament from real life, it looks like this. The stars, moon, and the sun are all inside of the firmament along with everything else on Earth. Above that is the heavens, and beyond that is the rest of space. If the same can be said for Teyvat, and it probably can because we know Genshin loves to reference real-life religions and history, then the reason the stars are fake is because they're inside the firmament and everything within the firmament is controlled by Celestia. That means that beyond the firmament is a realm outside of Celestia's control. What could that be other than the Abyss? And if you look at that diagram of the firmament, again, it aligns with how the Abyss is described as being beneath Teyvat. But at the same time, it would also have to be all around it, even above. The Abyss is to Teyvat what outer space is to Earth. So back to the initial question, how can time be different between Teyvat and the Abyss? If the Abyss really is just like outer space, then that actually explains everything. The theory of special relativity, otherwise known as one of the most famous scientific equations in the world, states that space-time is curved based on the influence of celestial bodies, therefore time flows differently depending on where in space you are. For example, if you were to be sucked into a black hole, time would essentially stop due to its enormous mass and gravity. Time is different all across space, so if the Abyss works as Genshin space, then time should be different there too. That's all there is to it. There's no magical explanation for why 3 days on Teyvat equals 3 months in the Abyss. It all just comes down to real-life science. Alright, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's been 2 months since I made a real video. Honestly, I feel terrible about it, because I love making these videos, and it just sucks that I haven't been able to do much of it lately. School's been taking up a lot of my time, so I just can't do as much as I'd like to. I have finals next week, and then I finally go home for the summer, so hopefully things will change and I'll be back to making videos regularly again. Aside from that, I'm really curious to know who's been playing Honkai Star Rail. Hoyoverse invited me and a bunch of other content creators in the New York City area to go to a launch event in Times Square a couple weeks ago. I only got to play a little so far, but I can't wait to play more once finals are done. If you guys are interested, I'd probably want to make Star Rail videos in the future, so let me know if you guys want that. Thank you so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye, besties!